Ba 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 ba. For whom Deidbell tolls.
Hello and welcome to PoE Bad Builds, False Prelate here. Today I'd like to showcase a build that I made for the Synthesis Hardcore League. Basically this build utilizes 4 Ancestral Warchief Totems, deal damage, it uses the Champion Ascendancy to get extra chance for Impale, and it uses Dread Banner to further increase that Impale chance up to about 40%. So the build deals pretty good damage. It's also very tanky and safe to play, as you can see in the video here. It has decent regen, good mitigation, just an all-over pretty strong build. And it can be done on absolute, like, basic gear. The idea here was to use the Deidbell unique helmet to its full potential by having a full Ancestral Warchief build, and to not have to worry about the negative leash consequences of the Deidbell. So the Deidbell gives you 20% increased attack and movement speed if you've used a Warcry recently. So we're using our Warcry all the time, and we can do that because we're not attacking with the main skill other than our War Chiefs. So what are the general pros and cons of this build? Well, one of the big pros is that as a champion, you get Fortify 100% of the time, and also you get stun immunity 100% of the time, and that kind of clears up a boot slot that you might use for combs, and you're actually able to get movement speed. So that's pretty nice. And then with the Deidbell passive, you're getting 20% movement speed from that too. So you can actually fly around the map pretty easily, and definitely the clear speed feels good. Another big pro is the fact that since you're not actually attacking anything yourself, you're using the totems, you don't have to worry about map mods like Reflect. And actually, in general, most of the map mods are pretty easy to deal with. What about cons? So I guess the biggest con is that the damage just isn't really there at the higher tier map level. And part of this has to do with the fact that since you're using blood magic, you're not using auras, you're not really scaling the damage as effectively as you possibly could be. Still, this is a fun and safe build, and I would definitely recommend it for a player playing hardcore for the first time. Okay, I'll leave a path of building link in the description, but let's take a look at some of the items and skills that make this build interesting. So the Deidbell helmet gives us 20% attack, cast, and movement speed if Warcried recently. It also has 10 to 20 physical damage to attacks, and it has 20% increased melee damage. Now this is interesting because melee damage does not actually affect ailments, but because Impale works off of the hit damage, it actually works with Impale. So we're taking Dread Banner and Master of Metal to get our Impale chance to a level where we're doing reasonable amounts of Impales. And because we have multiple totems, we actually do quite a bit of Impales. For our weapons, we're using 2 rare axes. Ideally, you'd want chance to impale on them. However, this just really doesn't exist at a reasonable price in the Hardcore League right now. For our gloves, we're looking for a rare that has added fizz to attacks, attack speed, armor, and life. And for our body armor, we're just looking for a generic 6-link rare. For our jewelry, we're just using basic rare jewelry with fizz to attacks, life, and resists. For our belt slot, we're using Perseverance Vanguard Belt, which gives us Onslaught all the time because we always have Fortify, and increased attack damage based off of our lowest of Evasion and Armor, which in our case is Armor, and we actually get about 30% increased damage off this, so it's not too bad. For boots, just regular old boots with some movement speed on them, and our flasks, we're just using 4 utility flasks and a life flask. Again, this was meant to be a budget build, and none of the items are really that expensive except for the chest piece. In terms of our gem links, we have our Dread Banner set up. We have a phase run cast on damage taken set up. We also have our main setup with our War Chief totems, where we have Ancestral War Chief, Melee Fizz, Chance to Bleed, Brutality, multiple totems, and Maim. The reason we're using this is for the added defense. We have an Orb of Storms Curse on Hit setup with Punishment and Duration just to make it last a little bit longer. and we have a Leap Slam set up. And of course, we don't need Fortify hooked up to it because we always have Fortify. We also have an Immortal Call set up with Enduring Cry, and of course, we need the Enduring Cry to keep our Deidbell going. So here you can see the skill tree. This was based off of the build that I made for my previous video where we created a build from scratch based off of one item, in this case the Deidbell. So basically you're just looking for physical damage and life and totem damage. We also pick up blood magic so that we can just constantly cast and not have to worry about mana. It also helps with our life. And we pick up Axe Nodes and Resolute Technique for the damage. We come down and pick up all of the one-handed damage nodes, as well as life and life regeneration, and some totem nodes just to keep the totems alive. Ancestral Bond just to have more totems out, and then some Area of Effect nodes. Even with just this one Area of Effect node and a couple of melee range nodes, this build feels like it has pretty good range on the totems, and clear definitely feels pretty healthy. Okay, so for Ascendancy nodes, we have Unstoppable Hero, which gives us some stun immunity and some armor. We have Fortitude for the permanent Fortify, and Master of Metal for our Impale chance. If I were to get the Ascendancy node for the Uber Lab, I would pick up the Taunt nodes because it would be really good for survivability. Well, that's it for the video. If you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks guys, and have a great day.